Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're taking history out of the textbooks and bringing it right into your living room. We're going to dive into the lives of two incredibly fascinating people, Henry Arnold White and Amy Frances Oatley White. Now, born in the 1820s, Henry and Amy aren't your famous generals or presidents, but they are the absolute perfect avatars of a rapidly changing 19th century America. By following their journey, we're going to see exactly how the United States transformed right before their very eyes.
Okay, let's dive into this. You might be wondering, how exactly does one ordinary family mirror a massive, sweeping national transformation? Well, if you track the milestones of the White family, you start to see this profound micro to macro shift. During the Andrew Jackson era, America was fundamentally changing from an economy based on farms to one driven by factories. And Henry and Amy, they lived that shift day in and day out. Their personal decisions, their migrations, their livelihoods, they all perfectly map onto the changing DNA of the entire nation.
Part 1. A Changing New England, From Farms to Factories. To really get Henry and Amy, we've got to understand their environment. They were born into an old world, but came of age in a completely new one. Henry was born around 1824 in rural Gloucester, Rhode Island, to Jonathan and Miranda White. Amy was born just a couple of years later, in 1826, in South Kingstown, Rhode Island, as the ninth of 14 children to a Baptist minister. Both of their families were deeply rooted in an older agricultural society, but as the 1830s came to a close, both families made the strategic westward migration to Killingly, Connecticut. Why? Well, because Connecticut was absolutely exploding as a center for textile manufacturing. They were quite literally moving from the past into the future, chasing the engine of the Industrial Revolution.
Part 2. Marriage and Migration, a Shared Path.
So after both families relocated to the heart of Windham County's growing industrial community in Killingly, Connecticut, their paths finally crossed. On June 30th, 1844, Reverend L. George Leonard officially married them in nearby Thompson. Henry was just 20 years old and Amy was only 18. This wasn't just two young people falling in love, it was the official merging of two families who were planting deep roots in the region's cornerstone textile industry. They were building their future right on top of the foundation of New England's brand new economy.
Part 3. The Industrial Boom, Upward Mobility. Let's move to Antara and see how this builds. If we anchor their personal milestones to the turbulent national eras of the 19th century, a fascinating picture emerges. They marry during the massive boom of the 1840s Industrial Revolution. They raise their children as the nation hurtles toward the Civil War in 1861, and their lives are forever altered by tragedy in 1864. You see, their personal timeline is inextricably linked to the national timeline.
And if we look at the census data, we can literally track Henry's career evolution. In the 1850 census, Henry's listed as a weaver, so a skilled worker, but still an employee. By the 1860 census, his occupation has completely changed to manufacturer. He had gained responsibility, stepping up in that industrial world. Meanwhile, Amy was managing an incredibly demanding household, keeping house and raising an expanding family that grew to 5 children. It was a true partnership driving their family forward. And this brilliantly illustrates that upward mobility. By that 1860 census, Henry had accumulated $1,000 in real property. Now, I know that might not sound like a huge number to us today, but in 1860, that was a highly substantial sum. It marked Henry and Amy's rising middle-class prosperity. They were successfully navigating this new industrial economy and turning their hard work into tangible, undeniable wealth on land inherited from Henry's father on Hartford Pay.
Part 4. Tragedy Strikes, Medical Realities.
But, prosperity couldn't protect them from everything. Henry and Amy had a large, bustling household. Ellen Frances, Julia, Emily, Henry J., and Frederick. This family was absolutely a source of immense joy, but it also brought some really deep heartbreak. An unnamed infant daughter born in 1858 tragically died shortly after birth. This is a stark, devastating reminder of the incredibly high childhood mortality rates of the 19th century. Even for an upwardly mobile family, life was extremely fragile. That fragility hit the absolute core of the family on November 12, 1864. Henry's world completely shattered when Amy tragically died in Norwich, Connecticut. She was only 36 years old. So the crucial point is understanding the medical realities of the Civil War era. The cause of her death was a strangulated hernia. Today, a strangulated hernia is a highly treatable condition that just requires routine surgery. But in 1864, before modern surgical techniques and antibiotics, it was a sudden death sentence. Just like that, Henry was left a widower in the middle of a national conflict, now tasked with raising 5 children ranging in age from 4 to 19, all on his own.
Part 5. Rebuilding Life, Resilience, and Family.
After nearly 2 years of managing alone, Henry actually found love again. He returned to his birthplace in Gloucester, Rhode Island, and on June 29, 1866, he married Almira Elizabeth Winslow. Almira was a young widow herself, and together they blended their families. They would go on to have 2 more children, but the hardships of the era certainly didn't stop. They endured another tragic infant loss, and their daughter Effie would pass away far too early at the age of 25. Yet, through all of this immense heartbreak, Henry showed remarkable resilience, and the family held together.
Now, what's really interesting about his career progression here is how it maps onto the changing times. Look at this. Weaver to manufacturer, to cotton mill worker by 1870, and finally to carpenter by 1880. This perfectly mirrors the shifting economic opportunities and the physical demands of life in New England as the Gilded Age approached. He adapted his skills to exactly what the growing communities of Connecticut needed to survive and thrive.
Henry's long journey came to an end on August 1, 1885, when he passed away in Killingly at the age of 60. He was attended to by a local doctor, Dr. E.A. Hill, and his cause of death was listed as locomotor ataxia, which is a neurological condition. He was laid to rest in Bartlett Cemetery No. 1. Interestingly, there are 0 probate records for Henry, which tells us that the transfer of his estate to his family was likely direct and modest, a quiet end for a man who worked tirelessly his entire life.
Part 6. A 19th Century Legacy, a Lasting Impact.
So what does this all mean? Henry and Amy's lives were relatively short, but their historical footprint was incredibly long. Their children carried their spirit of devotion and hard work forward. Their daughter Emily, for instance, lived all the way until 1936. Think about that for a second. The children of a man born in the era of Andrew Jackson, a man who wove textiles by hand, lived to see automobiles, the dawn of the modern age, and 2 world wars. The foundation Henry and Amy built in rural Connecticut rippled out well into the 20th century.
Which leaves us with this final provocative thought to chew on. How does the quiet resilience of ordinary people actually build the modern world? We so often focus on the famous politicians or the wealthy inventors, but as we've seen today, the sweeping transformation of America, the rise of industry, the expansion of towns, the creation of the middle class was actually built on the backs of unheralded, hardworking families just like the Whites. Their daily struggles, their adaptations, and their resilience, those are the true building blocks of the world we live in today.